This is Dr.Ayesha Mughees on Galaxy Radio Namibia with our topic emotional intelligence as for today for our Galaxy Fact segment. Now we have somebody very special all the way from Cape Town, South Africa, who is an emotional intelligence expert or specialist. Now we'd like to ask some questions from her to make clear what is emotional intelligence and how could you apply that to your daily life and make yourself a better person, to make your relationships around you better, and to help you understand yourself and others, their emotions, in a much better way. A very warm welcome to you, Deborah Mcphilemy. Alright, to begin with, Deborah, we'd like you to first throw some light on what is emotional intelligence? How would you actually define emotional intelligence? We know a lot of books have come out by Daniel Goleman and many others. So, what according to you is emotional intelligence? And we'd also like you to tell us, how do we know if someone is emotionally intelligent or not? How do we know if someone has a high emotional intelligence? We also would like to know what is the difference between IQ and EQ, where IQ stands for intelligence quotient and EQ stands for emotional quotient. Is it possible for someone to have a high IQ but low EQ and vice versa? Also, what are some of the ways a person can develop emotional intelligence? As we know that intelligence quotient is something that is intrinsic, whereas emotional intelligence is something that you can develop. So, what are some of the features of emotional intelligence, if you'd like to put that in front of us? And also, what are some of the diverse cases as an emotional intelligence expert, specialist you get, and what are some of the tools that you use to treat them? Is developing emotional intelligence a good way to prevent bullying or to help bullies or those being bullied itself? After that, moving on towards the course that you did from the United States of America, in which you have studied how nutrition affects your health. Others say mood food. So, would you like to highlight how food affects your emotions and what are some of the healthy foods that you would like to recommend or suggest to improve one's emotions? Yes, Deborah.
Hi, Asha. Thank you very much for having me. It's good to be here. So, what is emotional intelligence? Well, you know what? It's actually quite simple. And emotional intelligence is really just about understanding your emotions, why you have them, what you can do with them, how to express them. Because we're all born with emotions, every single one of us. But historically, we have been taught to suppress our emotions, not show our emotions. We've been told that it's wrong to feel angry, show anger. We shouldn't feel scared. We shouldn't feel sad. We shouldn't cry. There's all these things that we've been brought up with, been told we shouldn't do. But the thing is, emotions are such a natural part of us. Because if you think about it this way, if you didn't have emotion, what would you be? You could just be a goldfish in a goldfish bowl because you wouldn't feel anything. So we have good emotions and we have bad emotions. Our good emotions are obviously there just for us to enjoy, just to make life pleasurable. We feel happiness, we feel love, and it makes us feel good. And our feelings that make us feel uncomfortable, though, are more important because these are the emotions that actually tell us that something is wrong, and it's usually to do with that we're off track with who we are. We're living according to other people's values, not our own values. Possibly our purpose is, we're not living on purpose. So we're living a purpose that is designed by somebody else. A lot of times, we grow up with parents that say, well, you should become a doctor, or you should become an engineer, or you should become a teacher. And you just kind of do it because you've been told to do it, not because there was a desire to do it. And often, If you find that case that you're going to a job and you're feeling uncomfortable feelings and you're not feeling happy, that is telling you that you're not in the right profession. So emotions are very, very, very important. Emotions also tell us when we are unsafe, because intuition is such an important factor today, and our intuition can really guide us and lead us and keep us safe. And specifically when it comes to children, if we teach our children how to tune into their intuition, they will obviously be a lot safer and stay away from certain circumstances and situations. But in order for you to tap into your intuition, you need to know what your feelings are and what they feel like, because often fear is seen as intuition, which it's not. So yes, emotions are very important. And then also when it comes to our medical health, stress plays a massive role. And if you are suppressing your emotions or you're not expressing your emotions, this can be turned into stress. It can make us feel anxious. So it's very, very important to be able to identify and express our emotions. And that's all emotional intelligence really is. It's about learning about your different emotions, and there's hundreds of different emotions, and there's different levels of your emotions, and then knowing what to do with them, how to express them, how to understand yourself. The other thing about emotions is it's also a form of energy, because if you think about it, when you have an emotion, you are inspired to move or act based on that emotion. So they are a form of energy, and that is the slight difference between feelings and emotions, because the feelings are, you feel something and then it turns into emotion, and then you act based on that feeling, and that's your emotion. So in a nutshell, that's what emotional intelligence is. And also, just to explain a little bit more about where your emotions come from, they obviously come from your perceptions of what is happening in your life. So if you're looking at an event, if you're listening to something, if you're experiencing something, that information comes through your senses. It then becomes a thought, the thought becomes a feeling, and the feeling becomes an emotion. But your thought is based on your interpretation of your event. And what happens though, your interpretation is often based on the past. So because your brain works in pictures and memories. So if something happened to you, whether it was a small trauma or a big trauma when you were a child, that information is stored in the emotional brain, and more specifically in your amygdala. So when you then have or experience another event or see something that is similar to what has happened in the past, that inspires an emotion, but that emotion is based on the past and not on the present. And so this is the most important thing to learn when I teach people about emotional intelligence, is about identifying whether that emotion that you are feeling is based on the past or based on the present. And that's the whole process of becoming emotionally intelligent, learning what the difference is. So yeah, that's what EQ is all about. So how you know that when somebody is emotionally intelligent or has a high level of emotional intelligence is when they are self-aware. Now, obviously not self-conscious, because that's a very different thing, but self-aware meaning they are aware of how their actions are based on their emotions. They're very aware of their emotions. They're very aware of their behavior. They know what they feel, why they feel it, and what to do with it. And you can always tell how people react to people who are emotionally intelligent. Now, the quickest way that you can find out if somebody doesn't have a high level of emotional intelligence is if they blame other people. They blame circumstances, they blame the government, everybody else is to blame for their behavior. They don't take ownership or responsibility of their own behavior. That's when you know that somebody has a low level of emotional intelligence. And following on from that as well, that when you are emotionally intelligent, you know how to cope with your emotions. You're able to self-soothe. Um, you're able to calm yourself down. You're able to wait, be patient until you express yourself, instead of just acting out based on what is going on right there and then. You stop and think, before you act. That's another way of identifying whether you have, a good level of emotional intelligence. Other people, or should I say people who have a lower emotional intelligence, are they get so overwhelmed with their emotions. They don't know how to calm themselves down. They get into states of panic. They get into states of anxiety very quickly. They have panic attacks. They just don't know what to do with those overwhelming feelings of emotions, and they tend to withdraw themselves from society. But it's also, you can look at relationships, because somebody who gets on really well with other people, who's easy to be with, those are generally people that have high levels. People who isolate themselves, push other people away, are fearful of people, are generally people who have a lower level of emotional intelligence. The difference between IQ and EQ is that IQ is your intellectual quota. So obviously, how intelligent are you? How are you able to absorb information, knowledge? Just, I think everybody understands what intellectual quota is. Now, EQ is just a abbreviation for, obviously, emotional intelligence. Some people call it EI, but EQ is about what is your quotient of how understanding you are of your emotions. So how well do you know them? How are you able to express them? Now, yes, it's very possible for somebody with a high IQ to have a low EQ. And you can always tell by the way they interact with people, or the way they don't interact with people. Because when somebody has a high level of emotional intelligence, they are they have very, very good people skills. They have great conversations. They're easy to get on with. But some people have a very high IQ, but they have no people skills whatsoever, or they have no social skills. But the beauty about emotional intelligence is that you can teach it at any age. They've shown that you can actually teach emotional intelligence to babies from the age of 8 months, and you can teach it right up to 70, 80, 90. So yes, you can teach this at any age. And it's just, as I said, it's all about people's behavior and understanding yourself, basically. Some of the ways of developing emotional intelligence is to always start with words. It's fascinating how in the workshops that I run, how few words, emotion words, people actually know. They usually know the general ones: love, hate, anger. And I think the biggest amount of words that we had in one group, I think, came up to about 23. But as I said, there's hundreds of them. I've got a list of 188, and then there's different levels of them. So the very first thing is that you've got to look at learning about emotional intelligence as if you're learning a new language, because emotion is communication, and it's the most important part of communication. So when you're learning a new language, the very first thing they teach you to do is to learn the words. So, and if you go onto the internet and you go Google, you will find loads and loads of images of emotion words that you can find. You can print it out, stick it up on your fridge, stick it up on your computer, stick it up somewhere, and every day just learn 2 new words. So discover what the words are, what their meaning is, because that is always a good start. Because once you get that, you have your vocab, or you have your emotion vocab, when you increase that, you can then start identifying things, and you can start understanding what your emotions are, because there's no use in just knowing what 5 different emotions are, because there's so many different scales within those words. So that's the first thing that I would suggest. The second thing is to become self-aware. Become aware of your own actions. Become aware of why you do certain things, because we learn to do things unconsciously. We're so programmed to just react in a certain way. We form habits, we form routines, and we just kind of do it. One of the most amazing ways to become aware of your emotions is through music. And first of all, because obviously the song that you're listening to might be full of emotion. The person who wrote it, the person that's singing it, is singing it with a certain emotion. Secondly, that happens if, for instance, it ignites a memory. So if maybe you lost a loved one, you lost a pet, and that song was playing in the background, that would then give the same emotion as what you had experienced when you heard that piece of music. So that's another very, very good way of becoming aware of your emotions. So as I said, the words, the music, becoming self-aware, looking at your reactions, why you're doing certain things, why you acting out? Why are you becoming angry? Stop and think and say to yourself, why am I behaving this way? Why am I shouting right now? Why am I, hitting my fist against the wall? Whatever the case may be, stop and ask yourself why you're doing that. Because as I said, we just do things on automatic. So those are three ways that you can start learning to become more self-aware of what you're feeling in your body and why you're reacting based on that feeling that you're experiencing. One of the worst cases I had was a little girl had been diagnosed with ADD, ADHD, and her mom came to me and she said, the school does not want her to be in the classroom anymore. They want me to medicate her and they want me to put her into a special school. And she said, please, will you be able to help her? Can you see her? Can you see if this is actually the case? Is there something you can do about it? You're my last resort before I have to put my little girl into a special needs school, and I don't want to do that. And anyway, and this little girl came to me, and I did a 6-week course with her and various other children. And one of the tools that I use with children especially is that they sit in a little circle, and I give them each a mirror, and then they've got to pass the mirror around, but they've got to look at themselves in the mirror, and then they've got to tell me everything they like about themselves and everything they don't like about themselves. And the mirror had got to this little girl, and she looked in the mirror and she said, I don't like anything about myself, and I'd like to change everything about myself. And I said to her, well, why do you say that? And she said, because I'm stupid. And I said, but who told you you're stupid? And she said, my teacher told me I'm stupid. And I said, why is that? And she said, well, because I can't do maths, and so I am stupid. And basically I said to her, well, what are you good at? And she said, well, I'm really good at geography. I'm really good at whatever else the subjects were. And I said to her, well, you know what? I am terrible at maths. Do you think I'm stupid? And she said, no, you're not stupid. I said, well, there you go. Sometimes, some of us, we are good at certain things, and sometimes we're bad at other things, but it doesn't make us stupid. It just means that we're good at some things and we're not good at other things. And, that little girl's perception of herself changed so radically that her ADD, as they diagnosed her, just simply disappeared. Because what was happening was that she felt so stupid and she felt so uncomfortable in her own skin that it made her hyperactive. So she was constantly moving around. She just, as I said, she felt uncomfortable in her own skin. She never went to that special needs school, and she never had to go onto any Ritalin or any kind of medication. So that for me was just an extreme example of just how badly children can be diagnosed with a condition that they don't have in the first place, because it's just an emotional expression or an unease of their emotions and how they feel about themselves because of something a teacher said. And this is, I just want to make this point right here, is that words are so powerful, and there's so many adults that don't realize just how powerful their words are. And specifically when working with younger children, I've had a lot of other studies as well, or a lot of people that I've worked with, should I say, a lot of case studies, but that one has always, it's always, what's the word? It's always stood out in my mind, because it was just such an incredible transformation of something that had happened, that could have been alleviated so quickly. Bullying is something that's very, very close to my heart in terms of helping children that have been bullied or children who have become bullies, should I say. I was bullied at school. I loved school. As I said, one of my passions is learning. And I was bullied by a teacher. I was picked on by a teacher at the age of 9. I was bullied at home. And it changed my life so much that I became so anxious, and something that I loved so much, being school, became a nightmare for me. It was just awful. And eventually I left school, but I'd gone to a couple of schools, and it almost felt like bullying was following me around because I didn't know how to change it, because when somebody bullies you or somebody calls you a bad name and you believe it, it changes your body language, it changes your internal view of yourself, and then you start feeling uncomfortable in your skin, you walk differently, you act differently, you sit differently, and human nature is that you are going to pick on the weak. It's just something that, it brings it out in some people where they have this way of wanting to pick on other people. And when you are a victim of bullying, or you become a victim of bullying based on that first experience, this is something that then perpetuates over and over again. It's just, as I said, unfortunately it's human nature. And it was only when I changed my mindset and changed my internal view of myself and started feeling comfortable with myself, and as well as releasing those old memories and that old trauma, that my life experience changed and I was no longer bullied. But as I said, I was bullied as an adult as well, and also went into quite a few relationships of domestic violence, which I think would have not happened, or I believe and science shows would not have happened, if I had recovered from the bullying that I'd experienced as a 9-year-old. Now, my children experienced exactly the same thing. When they were at school, they were both bullied, and my son was at school with a bully that used to bully him on a regular basis, and this bully eventually took his own life. And the thing is that, people think that bullies should be criminalized, or, they are the baddies, or they're the ones that should be taken out. But the reality is that a bully and a victim of bullying happens or is created in exactly the same way, because it's all about a loss of power. So, for instance, in my case, when that teacher picked on me and I believed her, and I then felt less powerful about myself. You lose power about your confidence. You just lose a lot of yourself because you believe somebody else. Now, that then, because it wasn't corrected, that my condition, or for lack of a better word, continued throughout my life until that ended, that trauma was released. Now, when a bully is created, something similar would have happened to them as well. And it's just a different choice they make. So when somebody also loses their power based on what has happened to them, whether a parent has maybe given them a hiding, which I don't believe in at all, or somebody else has hit them, or somebody else has called them names, they then make a decision and go, you know what, I can't stand feeling that way, so therefore I'm going to get my power back by overpowering somebody else. So as you can see, a victim of bullying and a bully is created in exactly the same way. So that is why I'm so passionate about helping people who this has happened to. And unfortunately, this is something that is getting worse and worse throughout the world. Before it was just playground bullying, now it's in the workplace, it's now online, it's virtual, and 60% of children are now bullied, which is a massive, it's a massive statistic, and it's a very concerning statistic. Yes, so mood food, as I like to call it, it's not only food that can affect your moods, but obviously the other chemicals that we eat. Now, the one that is the worst, and especially in big quantities, is sugar, because sugar, as you know, spikes your insulin. Your insulin then goes up, you start feeling a surge of energy, and then the next thing you have a crash. You then feel very tired, and then obviously your insulin affects your other hormones in your body, so whether it's your estrogen, your testosterone, and whatever else. So sugar is a massive problem, and specifically, you find that a lot of people will give children sugary things in the morning, which is the worst thing that you can do, is to give children simple carbohydrates or sugar-laced cereals. It's just so much better to give a child some form of protein, or even some form of oatmeal, or something that has a slower burn effect, because I've seen children already that have had too much sugar, and suddenly they hit that low and they just start crying uncontrollably, and they can't understand why they're crying. And then, of course, the parents get irritated and they get annoyed. They don't know what's going on with this child, because then they're hyper, then they're low, and they haven't connected the dots to realize that, well, it's got to do with their the food that they eat. The other thing that really affects children is chemicals. So there's so many chemicals in our food. So if you think about preservatives, colorants, sweets, the body sees anything that is not natural as a toxin. So it sees it as it's some sort of a poison, and it has to rid the body of it in a very, very quick way. So that's why children become hyper and they start moving and they don't know what to do with themselves and they become really irritable. And often children have these outbursts of anger and rage. And that's actually because a chemical reaction is happening in their body, and their body is trying to get rid of these chemicals that they've ingested. And I just think it's so important that parents start looking at boxes when they buy them, start looking at the labels, look at the packaging, because there's just so many different chemicals on there that, we can't even pronounce a lot of the things, and a lot of them are unnatural. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you can then just go on to the opposite extreme and, for instance, give children lots of fruit juice. I mean, fruit in their natural form is really good, but when you take fruit and you juice it, you actually now turning it into pure sugar, and you can have those same simple, you can have those sugar spikes that I spoke about before. So it's very important to make sure that, when you're feeding your children, make sure that they're getting lots of good healthy fats. Omegas are so important for the brain, and they've just shown that you can use omegas to calm the brain down instead of using all these horrible other pharmaceutical drugs that they use. Give them eggs in the morning, give them oats in the morning, give them other forms of protein, give them natural sugars. And if you are going to give them natural sugars, for instance, like dates and date syrup, and but make sure that you are mixing them with, complex carbohydrates, or that their meals are balanced. But the worst thing you can give to children are these simple carbohydrates that are burnt up very quickly in the body, and it's going to give them those sugar spikes. Not only that, it affects other parts of their moods. For instance, children can become really depressed, and they don't realize, I think a lot of people don't realize that children can also have mental health issues. And your mental health issues come from the way you're feeling, and your feelings often are affected by your food and chemicals. The other thing that is quite important is that environment also has a massive effect on people's moods and emotions. So chemicals in the house, for instance, fly spray, perfumes, aftershave, all of those can affect people's moods, because if they're toxic and you're inhaling them, they're in your environment, then once again, it's going to make your body agitated. It's not going to recognize it. It's going to form a massive chemical reaction as the body tries to expel it from your body. You then have these weird forms of emotions and moods that happen because of that. So very, very important to look at your environment, have a clean environment, clean eating, and also just to eat as natural as possible. Learning how to develop your emotional intelligence, in my opinion, is the most important life skill that you could have. As I said, first of all, it's something so natural. And if you don't learn about your emotions from a young age, you're really going to struggle the rest of your life, because our emotions start to show early on in life. When we're 2 years old, we have what historically they call, terrible twos, and then terrible threes. But those are your emotions starting to show, and specifically because there's a huge surge of hormones with boys. The biggest load of hormones, testosterone, floods into the bodies at 2 years old. Girls start getting hormones. So learning emotional intelligence from a really young age, these life skills, you then have those skills for life, which then obviously also means that it acts in a preventative manner, because you then know how to deal with whatever happens, adversity, anxiety, bullying. You know how to cope with that, so it doesn't become a lifelong issue. The one thing about learning about emotional intelligence at an older age is about, you've got to understand how the mind and the body works together, because a lot of our emotions come from our memories. as I said, and what we do in our online training is very much about how you can change those memories, eliminate those memories, so that you don't have these emotions later in life. So if people want to know more about that, they can go onto my website, deborahmcphilemy.com. I have a new book coming out called Emotion Communication from the Heart. I also have an EQ Essentials course where people can sign up, and we've really made it available and affordable and accessible to all people. So you can find information about that on there. We also have a training course that helps parents and educators to teach emotional intelligence to children. But it really, really is a vital life skill. And as I said, in my opinion, it's the most important course that you can do. And not only that, the thing about emotional intelligence is it enhances your relationships. It changes your health. It changes every single thing about your life. So, as I said, in my opinion, developing your emotional intelligence is the most important thing in life. So thank you, Ayesha. Thank you for this opportunity. And as I said, reach out, find me on Facebook, go onto my website, and you'll find lots more information there to help you on your journey of becoming emotionally intelligent.
Thank you very much, Deborah Mcphilemy, for being on my Galaxy Facts segment. It was totally amazing having you. And to summarize, I think all of you, it's a good step to go towards your psychiatrist so he could help you with your emotions by giving you some medications if you feel emotionally depressed or sad at times. But alongside, as soon as the effects of those medications wear off, you stop taking those medications, then you're back to being the same, anxious, depressed, full of anger, a lot of other such emotions like that you cannot deal with. So what you should do is try to become emotionally intelligent. Train yourself, train your emotions, and try erase bad memories of your mind. So it's good to visit an expert like Deborah Mcphilemy, who could help you express your emotions in a better way, even if you're off medications, so that when you're not on medications, you don't have those bad memories. Psychiatric medications have a wide range of side effects, especially if you've been using them for a very long time. Therefore, train yourself to be able to heal yourself naturally with emotional intelligence. Develop and become emotionally intelligent. People like Deborah Mcphilemy. Right now, this is all from my Galaxy Facts segment.